On today's video, I'm going to be transforming this area where these overgrown shrubs are into an area where we can grow more plants. This is kind of the very place where my nursery began about 4 years ago, or almost 5 years ago now, and it's just become an overgrown mess and kind of a useless space. And I've got a big project coming up later on in this month. I'm going to need all the growing space that I can possibly find. So today I'm going to clean all of this out and show you how to turn something like this into a much more productive area for growing nursery plants. We're going to build a bed here, sort of like a traditional raised bed, but I want to show you a couple of key differences in how growing nursery plants in the ground is different than traditional uses for a raised bed. So stay with me and let's have a look. I'm going to start doing this by just taking a simple hand saw and cutting some of these down. These have gotten really big trunks on them over a few years, and we're just going to get all of this stuff out of here. So let's cut it down. Now, that took just, I don't know, 3 or 4 minutes to get all of that cut down. And now the hard part is getting these old stumps out of the ground to make this more of a bed that's a workable area. So I'm going to dig these stumps up and we'll just see how hard this is. Now this ground is relatively soft because we've had a lot of rain lately. So it's just a matter of cutting through the roots. Now, probably going to prove to be no small task here, but just kind of keep digging, keep moving, keep working your way around and cutting all the roots that you can as you go. Stumps like this tend to be manageable. Now this was a bed with 3 purple leaf sand cherries in it and a red twig dogwood growing in it. Used to have a couple of crepe myrtles in it, and they actually died this winter. And this space here has just become kind of useless to me. I'm about to need a whole lot of space, so cut through some of those bigger roots there. There it comes free. Now, if you're prone to getting out of breath pretty quick, I wouldn't recommend doing this when it's 92 degrees like it is out here today. It's a hot day. Take your time and do this when it's a little cooler, early in the morning, late in the evening, or get your neighbor to do it. Flip it over and there we go. We'll just clean it off a little bit. That'll keep us from pulling so much of our soil out of the bed, and it'll keep us from having such a huge hole. Same reason why when you pull a big weed out of the ground, you always shake it off to refill your hole. Here, well, that's going to be aggravating. We'll just cut that and deal with that in a little while. Now this next one is purple leaf sand cherry. It may be a little tougher. It's a little bit of a harder wooded shrub. Yeah, I can't get that. And when I'm digging up something like this and have a hard time getting through the roots, I have this tool. It's called a cutter-matic. Sharp blade on the front for cutting through roots, and I don't know of anything better to dig up shrubs, small trees, even cut through rocks than a tool like this. So, of course, if you want to get a cutter-matic and start whacking on the ground, always make sure you get your darn feet out of the way. That's always good. these will send you to the emergency room, and they may send you to the emergency room with half a foot. So always keep that in mind when you're attempting to do anything like this. Just be careful. It's a great tool, just requires a little bit of care in using it. It's worth mentioning that when you start digging around a stump like this with a shovel, that a shovel doesn't make a very good pry bar. You just can't get too much leverage on the handles of them, or you will break the handle. That's why this last shovel I got has a steel handle in it, so maybe it'll last longer. But you really have got to get the roots cut on a stump of any age at all, or you're just going to frustrate yourself more and more trying to get it out of the ground. So there's one annoying root somewhere that may have broke it. There we go. Get that out of the ground, and we'll knock a little bit of that dirt off. Toss it on the pile and see what's next. And after a short break, we'll try to get this last one. It's hot. Had to sit down for a minute, getting my breath out here today. All right. And now, having gotten all the stumps out of the ground, the next step is just to turn this ground over. So if you've got a shovel like I do, you can do it with a shovel. If you've got a tiller, now would be a good time to make use of it. Otherwise, you just need to turn the ground over to loosen it all up and prepare to make a bed out of this. And now at this point, I have this whole small bed here turned over. I turned it over once with the shovel, went back through it with the garden fork and turned it over again. As I was going, I picked out as many weeds as I could, as many old roots as I could from those little stumps. And this is a pretty clean bed now. It's got nice, soft, fertile soil in it, and it's going to do great. But this is not the last step for me, at least as far as the way that I do a bed for planting nursery plants. Now, if I were going to plant vegetables here for my own use, or if I were planting a flower bed or something like that, I wouldn't do anything else to this. I would just plant it. But since I'm planting nursery plants here, there's one more step that I do. And towards the end here, in just a minute, I'll show you exactly why I do that. But one thing I want to do next is take a big heaping wheelbarrow full of my potting soil and cover over this whole bed just a couple of inches deep. So let's go get that done. And we'll just take a rake and even that out pretty good. It'll take but just a minute to do that. Spread that out. That's probably on average about 3 or 4 inches deep, maybe. I like to take this garden fork and just kind of mix it in very shallow into the existing soil there. So you have just the native soil there mixing with that potting soil, and this makes a fantastic little raised bed. Still got some roots, and that's all right, and weeds, we'll get those out. And this makes a fantastic raised bed. Now, it's not a raised bed in the traditional sense of a raised bed where you put some boards or build you some kind of above ground container and fill it up with some sort of compost or potting soil or whatever. That's not what this is. This requires a whole lot less material than that. This is just lightly mixing your potting soil into the top couple of inches of your existing soil. And Fortunately for me, I do have a clay-based soil, which have kind of a love-hate relationship with that, but it is a fertile soil and it grows plants very well in it. So then the big question, and kind of the thing that you might be wondering and that I'd like to share with you, is why do I bother to mix this last bit of potting soil in here? Why do I do this at the end? Well, I don't think it really makes the plants grow better, although it's not going to hurt, because all you're adding here is you're adding some aeration to the soil, and you're adding just some organic matter, and you're going to improve drainage, and those things never hurt. But that's not really the point. And then just finally take a rake and smooth that out some and just try to get it pretty even. Doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, when you're growing plants in a nursery, you're not doing this to make it look spectacular. You're not doing this for curb appeal. There's not another person in the world that can see this except me. Well, I guess those of you watching can see it, so maybe more people can see this than I think. But you get the point. We're growing plants here to pot and to sell and to make money off of. We don't care if there's an ugly spot in our backyard because of it. So I don't know if this is so much of a secret as it is just something that you need to know. But the reason that I do this, the reason that I included this potting soil on top and mixed it in to make this bed fluffier is not so plants will grow better, but so when it's time to dig these plants, to put them in a pot, to put them up for sale, when it's time to dig these plants will come out of the ground easily when they're growing in a soft place. If I just took these and planted them directly in my ground, they would grow fine. They'd have nice, healthy looking plants. And they'd be absolutely horrible to be out here trying to dig these out of the ground come February or so before they break dormancy and it's time to pot them and sell them. So think about what you're doing in your nursery, that you're not doing something easy right now that's going to make something harder for you later. A lot of my plants I grow in pots, and a lot of them I grow in the ground. Some things tend to do better in pots than in the ground, and vice versa. But a plant that is growing in the ground is a whole lot less maintenance than plants that are growing in pots. You put them in the ground, you don't have to water them every day. They're just a lot less fussy, and the environment is more consistent. They're not in a hot pot, and they just do really well growing in the ground. So I like to grow as much as I can in the ground, but I like to be able to get them out of the ground without damaging them and without breaking my back 10 times over to do it. So that's why I've taken this step, this last additional step, building this little bed here to put my new plants in that will be here in a couple of weeks. And the final step on preparing this bed for plants to go in the ground is soaking it in. So many things we do, so many projects, so many chores, so many things that we do in the nursery. The last step is to take your hose and just absolutely give it a good soaking. And in a couple of weeks, I'll have some things to put in here, and I can't wait to show you those things. In the meantime, this is just going to sit here and settle and just wait to be used. And what just less than an hour ago was an overgrown area with old shrubs that I had big plans for that didn't work out. Today is a bed that is ready to be used in a very small way, but a very important way, to make a nurseryman some more cash. So I want to encourage you, take use of your ground space, take use of your pots for growing above the ground, and you're going to be well on your way to having an awesome start to your backyard nursery and to your growing. So this is the Savvy Dirt Farmer. I hope you guys will subscribe to my channel, hit the notifications bell, check out these other 2 videos here to get more information on growing in your backyard and how to run a successful nursery from home. And I will see you next time. Have a great day.